Welcome, Kaitlyn, and thank you for taking your time to share with us today. I will let you introduce yourself and then you can begin.
Great. Thank you so much, Pauline. Thanks for having me, first of all. So yes, Pauline said, my name is Kaitlyn. I work for Cornell Cooperative Extension in the Northwest region of New York. And prior to my work with the team, I worked as a dairy veterinarian for over a decade. So my expertise is in cows, not in people. So disclaimer, but obviously that's what we're dealing with as our main issue right now in the dairy industry with H5N1. So as we go forward, if you have questions, just go ahead and ask, and I will just share what I've read up on, what I've heard, and happy to hear more from everyone else on this call, because I know others of you probably have had been reading and hearing things from the field. So first of all, I think, there's this question around why are we worried about avian flu right now? What is different? And I'm sure all of you, you're all aware of what's been happening since February, but just as a recap, H5N1 has been around since I think the 1800s in Asia, and we've had the recent large outbreak of it in the States in 2022 in our poultry flocks, but it has been here previously. But that's the last time that we've had a large outbreak, and that was in the Northeast as well. So, we depopulated over, I think, 90 million birds through the last 2 years. So we've had it in the area, but what is new is that we are seeing it in domestic mammals. So we've also seen it in non-domesticated mammals previously. So raccoons and different wild mammals have had it, but so that's the difference. So we've had a few goat kids die with confirmed H5N1 in Minnesota, and then, as you know, over 80 dairy farms through 9 states throughout the U.S. Currently, we don't have it confirmed in the Northeast, and there has been some surveillance on bulk tank milk samples from dairy farms that have not found it yet, at least in New York that I'm aware of. But the real concern, and what we're talking about today is overflow into humans. And so we'll talk about the human cases. But basically just walking through, we have waterfowl, aquatic migratory birds that then can shed the virus and contaminate poultry. We're also now seeing mammals, as I said. Cats were big kind of sentinel animal for this virus that we saw, dead cats on dairy farms. But we're really worried about the human infections. And there's that question out there, can this lead to the next pandemic? And I think that's really important for us to take into consideration. So what have the human cases been to date? There are 3 cases that have been reported in humans in the current outbreak with H5N1 in dairy cattle, so related directly to that. So there was one in Texas that just showed signs of conjunctivitis, as you can see here, so pretty severe conjunctivitis. And then there were 2 reports in Michigan of dairy farmers, one who also had some upper respiratory signs, and all 3 have recovered, but they were in contact with dairy cattle. There's been a lot of question as to if there are unreported cases that maybe there's a higher level of transfer to humans that we're unaware of in the dairy worker population. I don't know what the answer is to that. I have talked to a few farms in Texas who had the virus in the beginning. So the first farms were infected in February, and then they had it in early March. So just when they're getting to understand what the cause of the symptoms were, and that this really was avian flu. And talking to them, they had no employees known to be infected with H5N1. This was a very large dairy, about 10,000 cows. And however, they said there were some employees with flu-like symptoms at the time. And I'll show what they did after the fact to do some testing later. So that question, anyway, that question is out there. I have heard concern that there are farms that are not reporting when their animals have symptoms of H5N1 for various reasons. Again, this is just kind of talk in the industry, so I don't have proof of that, but I think that's something we should really be aware of and try to encourage people to not be afraid to report and talk about how important it is for us to learn from this, since it's a virus in a novel species. So I think encouraging reporting is just so important. So how do dairy farmers employees get exposed? So basically, at this point, we're talking about mucous membranes, right? So there's a picture here, I think this is the most important one, is of an employee getting milk splashed into her eye. So from what we understand, raw milk is really the where virus is shed in the largest quantities. But we haven't ruled out that inhalation could be a route of exposure, and so any mucous membranes. So where does the virus live? Like I said, raw milk is by far the biggest concern. So we've seen cats on dairies that came down with neurologic signs and died from drinking raw milk. We know from testing that the milk has just enormous quantities of live virus. So in the milking parlor, I think that's really where our focus needs to be with prevention. But can we rule out other areas? No. We can have, because they have found the virus in various locations in the cow, including the lung, so in the saliva as well. It's possible to have live virus, so in waters and feed troughs, and they found it in muscle in cow and in the udder, obviously, because we know it's high quantities in milk. So can an employee get infected from scrubbing out and cleaning a waterer? Maybe. I haven't seen anything to say that is proven route, but again, that should be on our radar. But the focus is on the milking parlor. So if any of you, I don't know if anyone has not been in a milking parlor before. Anyone in this group not have been familiar with that? If not, you know, a lot of our farms are for stripping cows, so they're stripping samples of milk out, and so there's definitely, you know, cows can kick, so there's ways that milk can splash into a milker's eyes or get on their gloves, get on their hands. Most people wear gloves at this point. So how do we protect workers? So we were having a little discussion before I started, and with Linda and Pauline, and prevention is really the key, but I think trying to encourage people to care about this virus and is really important, because a lot of the farmers I've talked to, you know, people are really busy planting right now. They have other things on their mind, and it's not here, and a lot of cows don't die. So they're not so concerned, right? If this was foot and mouth disease, maybe people would be up in arms and really worried about it. But I think what's really important for us to relay is that this is not just another mild, like, indigestion viral indigestion that they're used to seeing. That's pretty common on dairy farms. This is something much more serious, and I think getting that point across so that hopefully people will be motivated to put into place more stringent biosecurity regulations is it's just really, really important for us. I know Rick was talking about doing the same with other herpes viruses and things in Lancaster, and that, you know, how do we find how to motivate people to care? So again, not found in New York, not found in any surveillance bulk milk samples at this point, but I put a picture of a trailer here because one of the big risks to us other than migratory birds is that we have farmers that are bringing cattle or to raise heifers out west, and then they bring the animals home, and we don't have a really great grasp yet as if that young stock is carrying live virus, is transmitting to adult dairy herd. So I think animal movement is really important. Migratory bird control is super hard. Limiting visitor entry, also really difficult because there's a lot of people going on to bring supplies to dairies. But what we can talk to workers about, and I think something that they can control, is clean clothing, cleaning their boots, and if they're involved in cattle movement, keeping trailers clean. One really important point is when employees are power washing things. Obviously, we're aerosolizing manure, we're aerosolizing if there was milk in that trailer or wherever. If there are a lot of farms power wash parlors, you know, we can spread very rapidly through power washing and aerosolizing droplets if there's live virus there. So I think PPE obviously in those situations is very, very important, even if we don't think we have the virus here yet. So talking about PPE, we had a really interesting talk by a woman who is an expert on high path avian influenza and poultry flocks, and she did a presentation at the beginning of this outbreak to the American Association of Bovine Practitioners. And one thing that really stuck with me from her presentation was how important gloves are above all else when it comes to prevention of the spread of HPAI to humans. And the way she described that was because people do not tend to touch their eyes when they're wearing gloves. So if you're stripping out a cow in the milking parlor and you have milk on your gloves from a contaminated animal, it's very rare that someone's going to then just wipe their eye with their gloved hand. So I thought that was an interesting point of view from someone who's a real expert in the field. And gloves are something that we know most dairy farms are used to having, employees are used to wearing. So one point that I find really difficult with the PPE in milking parlors is that employees complain about wearing goggles or safety glasses often because they fog up or they're just uncomfortable. And so I think trying to, you know, and obviously mucous membrane spread is important, so we can have aerosolized droplets get in the eyes and cause H5N1 in a human that way, and we've seen conjunctivitis as a result. So I think as part of this conversation, we need to be talking about what is the best, most comfortable, most usable pair of safety glasses that people will actually wear, or a face shield. Is that something people are more comfortable wearing? And so I think that conversation needs to be had because I know farms that have had the virus and they're had PPE on hand and their employees just don't want to wear it. So it's not always that the farmer doesn't provide it. It's how do we motivate people to understand the risks and actually wear that equipment. Raw milk, also drinking raw milk. Most of the dairies I know, employees and owners aren't drinking raw milk from their bulk tank, but certainly, like Rick was mentioning, some of the Amish farms and smaller farms, I think that practice is still really common. So getting that information out that raw milk is not, we do not want to be drinking it right now, no matter if we have the virus or not. Let's just be safe. And I think that's important. Vaccination. So there are H5N1 vaccines. I'm not familiar with how available in the process to get them, but I know we have a large stockpile of H5N1 vaccines for humans. And maybe if someone else knows more about that, they could chime in. But that's something I know that people are thinking about. I don't know it, if anyone has taken advantage of that yet, and they're in the process of developing a vaccine for cattle. So this is a picture of an affected farm that I actually used to work on, and this is in Texas. And I got the opportunity to catch up with their manager recently and ask, you know, what happened with your employees, what happened with your animals. And I just wanted to share what he said because I think it was really important. Excuse me. He wanted to emphasize that you absolutely do not want this on your farm. That might seem logical, but like I said, a lot of farmers I've talked to don't seem that concerned about it right now because they have other priorities. He said it was devastating for the animals and for their business. For the workers, he said, again, there were some people with kind of flu-like symptoms around the same time, but at the time they didn't know what it was. And everyone recovered and there were no real serious issues. And then during the outbreak, and it was about 7 to 10 days that they were dealing with the animals being infected. So at the end of that week, they actually had someone from Texas A&M come and do some nasal swabs. He was looking at a study, starting a study on H5N1 in dairy employees, and they had no positives come up on their farm, and there were still positive cows there. So again, this is not a published study. I just wanted to share that bit of information. Hopefully, I know there's a lot more work going on to try to do surveillance on this population. So how can we be proactive? Again, educating on the risk of human-to-human transfer. Everyone remembers the pandemic, and this is a real concern, a very real concern. And you guys, in the health industry, you know this better than me, but it is something we need to take seriously. And people need to understand that even though human cases are not severe as of yet, it only takes a recombination of that virus, which has happened before, to cause severe issues in humans. I should point out, we haven't confirmed any human-to-human spread yet, which is really when things get terrible, but we do not want to see that. So there is a site on the CDC that documents all previous potential human-to-human spread throughout the world, if anyone's interested, but there have been many small cases documented. We'll also encourage farmers to use USDA funding to bolster their biosecurity plan. So USDA has been continually increasing what they're offering to farms. First, it was just affected farms that they would pay for testing and PPE. I think the PPE is still just affected farms. They're paying for that from what I can read. But the biosecurity plan, they'll give $1,500 to any farm to increase their biosecurity plan. So to me, that's where we need to be encouraging farmers to take advantage of that and add in some biosecurity plans specifically for H5N1, including where they're going to get their PPE and what they're going to require. And then inform employees of the risks. So maybe if we can incite their amygdala in their brain for the emotional center to say, why it's so important to wear PPE, maybe people will be more willing to do so. And I think Pauline was going to share, these are just two of the resources that we have available. There's a lot more on the Cornell's Pro Dairy website, and I can share that link too if you would like, in terms of resources, both for Spanish speaking employees, as well as updates on food safety associated with the H5N1 and things like that. So I should share that in the chat, the Pro Dairy one as well. And that's all
And I
I
just
have.
shared the 2 links in the chat for everybody, and I'll also send that out when I send the recording.
Thank you.
Pauline, you're on mute if you're talking.
Sorry. I was just saying thank you, Kaitlyn. That was a very good presentation, and I'd particularly love to hear your, just the thoughts and the comments from the other farmers, because that's things that will resonate with you. And you had mentioned how people, coming from trusted sources, NICAM is working with the Department of Health to put out some information in the hopes that NICAM is associated. Maybe they will actually take some advice or not be so afraid to use what Department of Health and the USDA has offered.
Great idea.
Does anyone have any questions for Kaitlyn?
I had a couple. When you talked about raw milk, some businesses, that's part of their business is selling raw milk. Is there any way around that for selling the raw milk?
As far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong, but I don't believe that the state has shut down those operations from selling raw milk.
Okay.
If anyone else is aware of that, let me know. But I don't believe that they have shut those down. I know that the guidance is to pasteurize all milk before drinking. So I don't know how. I haven't talked to anyone who has a raw milk business to ask what they're doing right now. I would really hope that there are batch pasteurizers available and things they can invest in to pasteurize before they sell. That isn't that hard for most small farms. However, I don't know. It's a really,
I was just
really,
curious,
really good question.
I know in Pennsylvania, that's very common to sell raw milk.
Mm-hmm.
There was
It's
any type of shutdown or.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of, like, if an affected farm, they certainly can't be selling, they're shut down from selling their milk, but I don't think proactively we've done that. I can double check, and if I find anything else about that. Julie, did you know something about?
No, I was just thinking, like, I would think that one thing you could do is just have them encourage their customers, have them boil it. But then still you're dealing with potentially aerosolized milk, which is problematic. So that might not be a perfect solution, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the next best step, right? I would like to see it pasteurized before it leaves the farm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll have to look into that more. I'm really curious to know what the answer is to, like, if any states have like shut down and reimburse those businesses. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a
Thank
great
you.
question.
If I could just jump in, this is a big topic in Lancaster County right now. There's a specific farmer that's trying to sell raw milk, and this has been in the news extremely frequently. I can send it to you, or even if you just Google, I was able to do it quick on Lancaster farming.
Yeah.
Where is this? The headline is, now this is from January, but this is still ongoing. And I think because there are holes in this legally and with the Amish, then religious exemption comes in,
Right.
or maybe it doesn't. There's a lot of loopholes. Raid on farm sparks debate over raw milk oversight and government outreach. And so this particular article, I think, goes, pretty well into what the issue is. But it's gotten pretty contentious to the point where the police have been there, and it's just constantly been in the news, obviously over for at least the last 6 months. So it seems like there isn't any real hard and fast regulation on it at the moment. And I think that's part of the point of contention.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Lindsay. Yeah, it would be interesting to look into, and I think we'll see. I guess it would be interesting to know what other states have done, because the raw milk issue is always contentious no matter what. And it's, and then putting a known serious human health risk on top of it, beyond all the other risks we worry about with raw milk. I wonder if any states have what they have done, and that would be a good question to see the states that have affected herds. Not that our milk isn't crossing state lines and all of that, but
yeah, the very last quote in here, the very last sentence is, "Listeria infections can be deadly. Who wants to be responsible for someone's death?" So
that is a true statement, actually. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Lindsay.
so much, Kaitlyn. I know you have to get going for another appointment. And again, we do appreciate your time coming and talking with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Kaitlyn.
it. All right, take care, guys. Thanks so
Take
much.
care. Have a good day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.
Okay, so our next presenters, we actually have two, and it's going to be Lindsay Pringle and Rick Eli, I'm sorry. And they were one of the recipients of the first NEASHC mini grant. And so we've kind of asked them to do the what, when, where, and why of the grant application and how it went. So I'll turn it over to them. And I will share your screen, your slide.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yes. Great. Thank you. Yes, there it is. Yeah. So who am I? My name, as Linda said, I'm Lindsay Pringle, and I work in Lancaster County for Penn Medicine, Lancaster General Health, as the Safe Kids Coordinator for Lancaster County. But I also co-chair our county's Amish Safety Committee. And so I am speaking here today on behalf of my good friend Kay Moyer, who is actually the real recipient with Rick of this particular grant. She was unable to join today, but Kay and I work very closely together, and we're very much aligned. And so I am happy to present this information on her behalf, honored actually. So this is a brief slide that I had put together, and I'll just go through this first. Rick and I did not review our script together, so we'll just go ad hoc if that's okay. So I'll just go through what I have on the slide, and then Rick can throw in his 2 cents after me here and the specific outreach that he's done in this area as well. And so the grant funding that was provided to Kay and Rick was for printing of an educational preschool farm safety activity booklet. And so you'll see the front cover of that particular booklet illustrated here. All the illustrations are done also by Kay Moyer, the recipient. And so this is important because Kay is arguably the most recognizable educator in Lancaster County. She has been educating, I think, at this point, every living generation of the Amish in Lancaster County at this point. And so that's important to mention because this is trusted information. And within the Amish community, that is the foundation of really anything, especially for us English people to go into the community and provide any information. They have to, you have to be a trustworthy source, and they have to know you, and it's very interpersonal. And so by Kay going to the Amish schools for so many years and delivering this same information, it's paramount to being able to actually educate the community where they take it and they learn from it and they use it. And so that's why this grant funding was great, to be able to print and provide these booklets out into the community through Kay and through Rick, who's another trusted partner in the community as well, not only as a resident, but also within his role in emergency management. But I'll let him introduce himself when that time comes. So nonetheless, what we are talking about, or where we are talking about, is in Eden Township. And so you'll see that 40% of the population in this particular township in Lancaster County are Amish, and the majority of them are farmers. And we do have a number of schools in this particular township. And as you may be aware, the schools go from up to 8th grade, usually a one-room classroom where they're all in there together. It could be many siblings, and oftentimes it is siblings in the same classroom. And so she will deliver these books to the classrooms. They each get a copy. They'll be able to take it home. And what's great about these is that they are very popular with the Amish children. They love coloring books. We are not overwhelming them with technology. We do not utilize screens. It's very plain, plain community. It's very true. We also have other things, jump ropes I give out. They really love those. So it's interesting. You just go back to the basics with the Amish community, and coloring books are definitely the way to do that. And so you might also be asking, why Eden Township? Eden Township, when we look at our trauma data, the hospital I work for, Lancaster General, is the only level 1 trauma unit in our area. And so we're able to pull a lot of information from there and determine that this is a high impact area for farming injuries. And so this is of priority for us to do outreach. In fact, just this year, in April, we did a Farm and Family Safety Day in the Eden Township area, and through some outreach through the schools, similar to how these coloring books are distributed, we distributed flyers on the event. We had 336 Amish attendees, which was a 30-year record. This has been going on since the 90s, and 265 of them were children. And so exactly the outreach that we wanted to do, but it also just goes to show, how important the distribution is right to the schools. In fact, when I had registrations come in, they say, yeah, I'm coming for Kay Moyer's Safety Day. I'm like, hey, whatever gets you in the door, that's fine. So as I said, she's very recognized, very trusted. And so these coloring books definitely are far reaching for a number of reasons. The written text that she puts in there is also by design. She will say that you educate the parents through the children. So when they take these coloring books home, the kids will color them. They will ask, what it says on the bottom. Now the parents are incorporated as well in educating their children, but also they're, learning themselves by looking at these coloring books and reading the information. So it's far reaching there as well. And so really the overall goal with this and any other outreach that we do through the Amish Safety Committee and through the Emergency Management Agency and our other community partners that are involved is to save lives by spreading awareness of injury prevention. We want to decrease injuries in order to also decrease the cost of medical treatment. As you might be well aware, this is a self-pay community. They do not participate in commercial insurance. And so these injuries can be extremely costly to a family and a church district. And so it is of utmost importance to be able to provide this information to eliminate the injuries and then also make it, as cost effective as possible if there is one. And so the way that these coloring books were distributed was, again, through the direct school distribution that I had mentioned before. We also distributed these at that Farm and Family Safety Day that took place in April. And then I'll let Rick talk right after me through other community distribution by the local emergency management agency, which would be Rick. So Rick, if you don't mind, you can take it away.
All right. I couldn't get my camera to work, so I'm going to just talk. Good morning. I'm Rick Ely, Emergency Management Coordinator for Eden Township, and I've been the coordinator for 5 years now. Previously, I was a coordinator over in Salisbury Township in Lancaster County as well. It was a honor to receive that grant for this program. Kay put a lot of effort into designing this book, and I was glad that we were able to put the application in and go through the process and receive the grant. The grant, she ordered 1,000 books, and the grant was for $1,000, and that paid for all the books. So that was a pretty great investment on the part of the committee there to give us that grant. So as Lindsay said, the ways we've been distributing it at Farm and Family Safety Day, I don't know exactly how many books Kay gave away, but I know there was at least 4 cases, so that was at least 800 books that she gave away. And she gave me 2 additional cases, one of which I took to Quarryville Fire Company. They're in the borough. We're not actually, they're not part of Eden Township, but they were having a family day. So we distributed books there, and they gave, there was 200 in a box, and they gave away about 100 books at their family fun day. And then between interactions that I have personally with the Amish community, I've been able to give those families books while I'm out talking to them for whatever reason, and some other things that Lindsay provided to me from the Amish Safety Committee. I've been able to distribute some of those items as well. She was right about the trust issue. It's still a big battle for me to face. I've been able to establish trust with a lot. I also use Amish person as a liaison to go. He goes with me when I'm doing some of these different projects, so they understand that they can trust me what I'm trying to do. One of the big setbacks we had was we were trying to draw an emergency operation plan for the schools. As you can see, there's a lot of, with the different schools and the population of schools. So my deputy and I drew up a plan, presented it through my liaison to the bishops, who refused it, did not want to participate because of the government involvement. And that's what they didn't want. We tried to make it as simple as possible. It was like, here's just some steps you need to take to make things safe, but they didn't want us involved with that. However, there's other things we were able to do, distribute. I was able to get carbon monoxide detectors donated, and we were able to distribute them in each school through the caretakers for each school. So that was a big plus. But so there's a lot of community activity that we're trying to incorporate and get involved with, try to spread the word. We just, Lindsay didn't mention it. We just had a death last week. An Amish child on a farm, 3 years old, was killed. It was a farming accident. He was in the dairy barn when it happened. So it's a constant battle because of our population here in the township, and trying to get the word and do what we can to make it as safe as possible for them. And it's getting them to buy into it. So that's what our goal is.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you, Lindsay.
unfortunately,
and
it's
Rick.
not unheard of to frequently have these headlines of children on the farm. And so that's information that we do track. What we started doing recently in our Amish Safety Committee meetings is we have a member of the state police join. The state police typically does the patrol of our rural areas, just due to the smaller police size in some of those rural areas. They can't patrol 24/7. And so the state police covers in that gap. And so we've had one of the officers come and give us a little bit more detail about the specifics of what happened in that injury, so we can keep a pulse on that and continue to monitor trends and perform outreach that way. But yeah, unfortunately, this is when we're going to start to see a lot of these injuries happen. And so yeah, it's not fun for us to read because we're out doing a lot of the outreach. But, in some of the outreach that we are doing, unfortunately, that's with prevention, right? We're never going to know what didn't happen. So we just stay hopeful that the work that we are doing is reaching and that we continue to start seeing numbers go down.
Lindsay, with the Amish Safety Committee in Lancaster County, I know there's a lot of different health systems involved. Are you guys also tracking injuries or just fatalities?
Injuries as well, yes. So in addition to mostly it's injuries in the trauma center. Where we're getting death information is through the child death review, in which I also co-chair. And so I align both of that information together and to be able to track the most severe injuries that are coming in. Of course, we do that with a grain of salt because a lot of these injuries go underreported. So we have to also look at the headlines and see what's happening. Although, of course, a lot of the ones that do make the headlines are some of the more traumatic ones that occur. But it is good to also have the collaboration with the Amish Safety Committee, who there are about 5 or 6 Amish gentlemen who are on this as well, which makes it very unique and really kind of the first of its kind in the country, which is great. To be able to provide that anecdotal information as well that we would never be able to capture from headlines, trauma unit, child death review.
Thank you. Any questions for Lindsay or Rick? Okay.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be able to present on it. Thank you for the award and the interest. A lot of this is grassroots effort. And as Rick mentioned, usually government grants are off the table just because that's not something that the Amish community is really willing to accept. And so for these types of grants to come through really makes a big difference in Lancaster County. So thank you on behalf of all of us for that.
Great. Thank you. I will be sending out the recording of this afternoon. Lindsay already sent me the link about the raw milk in Lancaster farming. I'll send that as well as the resources that Kaitlyn provided. So that will go out today or tomorrow, depending on when I get the recording.